How do we talk to them? I used to think this was the beginning of your story.
It begins with a quiet, almost melancholic narration by Dr. Louise Banks, a renowned linguistics professor. Her voice is calm, yet heavy with sorrow, as she recalls her daughter's life, her childhood, her laughter, her illness, and ultimately her untimely death. The audience is drawn into Louise's personal grief, a loss that defines her existence. But before this grief can be fully processed, the world itself is shaken by a monumental event. One ordinary morning, as students shuffle into Louise's lecture hall, something strange occurs. The world's news channels erupt with breaking headlines. 12 mysterious alien spacecraft, shaped like massive oval monoliths, have appeared in different locations across the globe. Each ship hovers silently, suspended just above the Earth's surface, defying gravity. Their size is incomprehensible, hundreds of feet tall and wide, dwarfing human technology. Governments across the world enter a state of emergency, scrambling jets, deploying troops, and initiating communication protocols that were once thought to be science fiction. Louise's ordinary day as a teacher is shattered. Students are distracted, glued to their phones, unable to concentrate. She senses a shift in the world, something irreversible. In the following hours, panic spreads like wildfire. Markets crash. People riot. Communication networks are strained. Humanity stands on the brink of either an unprecedented breakthrough or complete annihilation. Louise, alone in her home that night, watches news footage of the colossal ship that landed in Montana, United States. Unlike others who see only fear, she feels an undercurrent of curiosity. Her mind, trained in languages and human communication, wonders not about war but about dialogue. How do we talk to those who are not us? How do we understand a species that may not share our biology, let alone our culture? This question, burning deep within her, is what sets her on the path to history. Today, while Louise tries to resume her normal academic duties, she is summoned by Colonel Weber, a high-ranking officer in the U.S. military. Weber arrives with an urgent proposition. The government needs her expertise as a linguist. They have managed to record audio from the alien visitors, a deep, resonant noise unlike any known human speech. Traditional methods of translation have failed. Louise listens carefully, analyzing the patterns, searching for structure, but she immediately realizes that this challenge is unlike any she has faced before. These are not simply foreign words. They belong to an entirely alien way of thinking. Weber is impatient, demanding results quickly. Louise insists that to truly understand the visitors, she must meet them in person. Language is not just sound. It is context, gesture, intention, and culture. Weber is reluctant, yet time is slipping away. Other nations are racing to interpret the alien message, and miscommunication could lead to disaster. After a tense deliberation, Weber concedes. Louise is flown to the military camp established in Montana, near the hovering alien ship. As her helicopter cuts through the mist, she sees the massive oval craft for the first time with her own eyes. It looms in silence, casting a shadow over the valley, its surface smooth and unyielding. Soldiers, scientists, and intelligence officers bustle around the base, their faces marked by tension and sleepless nights. Louise feels both fear and awe, her grief interwoven with the magnitude of this cosmic encounter. She is not alone in this mission. Alongside her is physicist Ian Donnelly, a man driven by science and rationality. Their partnership, though initially strained by differing approaches, will become the foundation of humanity's attempt to build a bridge between species. The world watches as Louise and Ian prepare to step into the unknown. Harry escorts Louise and Ian through a series of decontamination procedures, suiting them up in protective gear designed to withstand unknown pathogens. The atmosphere in the command center is tense. Every movement, every word is monitored. Finally, a convoy takes them directly beneath the alien ship. The massive structure hovers silently, an immovable presence that seems to defy the laws of physics. A ramp-like opening descends from the ship at scheduled intervals, granting access to humans who dare to enter. As Louise steps forward, the world seems to fade, the noise of the military base, the chatter of radios. Even her own heartbeat becomes muffled under the sheer weight of the moment. With Ian at her side, she ascends the ramp into the belly of the alien vessel. Gravity shifts unexpectedly as they enter. What was once down becomes sideways, and suddenly they are standing upright against what should have been a wall. The interior is vast and mist-filled, illuminated by a pale, diffuse light. At the far end of a massive chamber lies a transparent barrier, and behind it, two colossal beings emerge from the haze. These are the Heptapods, towering, seven-limbed creatures whose form is both terrifying and majestic. Their movements are deliberate, almost graceful, as though each gesture carries meaning. Louise, though overwhelmed, takes the first step toward communication. She removes her protective mask, risking exposure, because language requires vulnerability. With trembling hands, she writes the word human on a board and points to herself. In response, one of the heptapods raises a limb and releases a circular burst of inky smoke against the barrier. The shape is complex, almost like a calligraphic symbol suspended in the air. Louise realizes in that instant that they do not speak in words, but in symbols, each one unique, elaborate, and possibly filled with layers of meaning. This is not just communication. It is a doorway into an entirely new way of perceiving reality. Communication is slow, painstaking, and filled with frustration. Louise and Ian establish a daily routine of entering the ship, meeting the heptapods, and attempting to decipher the alien script. The symbols, which Louise names logograms, are circular and non-linear. Unlike human language, which flows linearly from beginning to end, the heptapod script exists as complete units, where meaning is not sequential but holistic. A single logogram can represent a complex idea, emotion, or even an entire sentence. Louise becomes obsessed with the patterns, studying them late into the night, drawing connections between shapes, analyzing subtle differences. She realizes that understanding their language is not just about translation. It requires reshaping the human mind to grasp concepts outside the bounds of time and causality. As she progresses, she begins to experience vivid visions of her daughter, moments of joy and sorrow that feel less like memories and more like glimpses into another reality. The deeper she immerses herself in the alien language, the more her perception of time begins to unravel. Meanwhile, tension mounts outside the camp. The Chinese and Russian governments adopt a more aggressive stance, interpreting the heptapod's presence as a potential threat. Global alliances fracture and the risk of war grows imminent. Louise argues passionately that miscommunication, not malice, is the greatest danger. But military leaders, bound by fear and political pressure, grow impatient. The clock is ticking, not just for the United States, but for humanity itself. Louise and Ian make progress. The heptapods reveal what seems to be their purpose. They have come to offer humanity a weapon. The word spreads like wildfire, igniting fear across the globe. To military leaders, weapon suggests hostility, an imminent attack. Nations prepare for conflict. Communication between countries breaks down, and panic escalates. But Louise, with her deepening understanding of the alien language, suspects that the word may have been mistranslated. In the heptapod's nonlinear script, meanings are not singular, they are layered, interconnected. What humans interpret as weapon may instead mean tool, or perhaps something beyond either category. She argues that the heptapods are offering a gift, not a threat. But her voice is drowned out by political hysteria. At the same time, her visions of her daughter grow more intense, bleeding into her waking life. She begins to question her own sanity. Are these hallucinations brought on by stress, or is the alien language altering her perception of reality? The boundary between past, present, and future begins to blur. In one haunting vision, she hears her daughter ask questions about love, loss, and choice, questions that echo the very mysteries Louise faces with the heptapods. As global tensions approach a breaking point, with China threatening to attack the alien ships, Louise realizes that her personal journey and humanity's fate are intertwined. The only way forward is to fully embrace the heptapod language, to think as they do, to perceive time not as a line but as a circle. For in their weapon, she suspects, lies the power to reshape the destiny of the human race. Pods continue their cryptic exchanges with Louise and Ian, releasing more intricate logograms each day. Louise, increasingly consumed by the patterns, begins to realize something profound. The aliens are not simply teaching humans a new vocabulary. They are reshaping the very framework of thought. Traditional human languages are sequential. They trap us in linear time. But the heptapods' language, built on circular logograms, allows them to perceive time differently, not as a chain of cause and effect, but as a simultaneous whole. For them, the past, present, and future coexist. As Louise deciphers more, she begins to think in their language. This shift brings with it vivid, almost hallucinatory experiences, visions of her daughter's laughter, her illness, moments of conflict and reconciliation, all unfolding not in chronological order, but as fragments of a greater whole. At first, Louise believes she is simply reliving memories, but gradually she understands that these are not memories at all. They are glimpses of her future. The realization terrifies and fascinates her. If the heptapod gift is the ability to perceive time non-linearly, then perhaps humanity's greatest limitation, the inability to see beyond the present, can be overcome. Meanwhile, governments worldwide grow more paranoid. Intelligence reports suggest that the Chinese are interpreting the heptapod's weapon as a call to arms, preparing to strike preemptively. Fear spreads like a contagion. Soldiers at the Montana camp grow restless. Scientists whisper of being sent home. Louise, however, pushes forward, convinced that the only path to peace lies in deeper understanding, not retreat. She feels herself caught between two worlds: the rigid, fearful world of human politics and the expansive, timeless reality of the heptapod. Unity among nations begins to fracture. International communication, networks that once shared, scientific progress are abruptly severed. Countries like China and Russia declare martial law, cutting off their research teams from global collaboration. Propaganda floods their airwaves, painting the heptapods as invaders and urging citizens to prepare for war. In the United States, pressure mounts on Colonel Weber to deliver tangible results. Military leaders grow increasingly frustrated with Louise's insistence on patience and nuance. They want answers in terms of threats and strategies, not philosophy and linguistics. Louise feels the strain of isolation. Only Ian seems to truly support her, recognizing the revolutionary implications of their work. Together, they build a bond rooted in mutual respect and shared wonder, though it remains fragile under the weight of looming catastrophe. Inside the ship, however, the heptapods remain calm, almost indifferent to human hysteria. Their patience is infinite, their presence unyielding. Louise begins to wonder if they anticipated humanity's reaction, if their entire mission is part of a larger plan beyond human comprehension. One day, during a particularly tense session, Louise dares to ask the heptapods directly, "Why are you here?" In response, they release a new logogram, one more elaborate than anything she has seen before. As she deciphers it, her heart races. It does not merely mean offer or gift. It suggests something greater, an exchange. The heptapods do not see themselves as saviors or conquerors. They have come because in 3,000 years, they will need humanity's help. This revelation reframes everything. Their weapon is not for war, but for survival. It is a tool to unite humanity, to prepare them for a distant future, where cooperation between species is essential. But convincing the world of this truth will not be easy. Louise wrestles with the implications of the heptapod's message. Unrest grows within the military camp. Among the soldiers, paranoia takes root. Fueled by fear-mongering media broadcasts, some believe that the aliens are manipulating minds, preparing for conquest. A rogue faction, acting independently, plants explosives inside the ship during one of the scheduled visits. Louise and Ian are present when the device is set to detonate. As they approach the heptapods, Louise feels a growing unease. The creatures, usually calm, appear agitated, their movements sharper, faster. Suddenly, one of them, later named Abbott, moves toward the barrier and releases a flurry of logograms, dense with meaning, almost desperate. Before Louise can interpret, a violent blast rips through the chamber. She is thrown backward, her vision blurring, ears ringing with the force of the explosion. Through the haze, she sees the heptapods shield her and Ian with their massive limbs, absorbing the worst of the impact. Abbott is gravely injured. Louise awakens later in the medical tent, shaken and disoriented. News spreads quickly. The aliens have withdrawn, closing access to their ship. Global tensions spike even further. The Chinese military issues an ultimatum, threatening to launch an attack if the aliens do not leave within 24 hours. Louise feels the weight of guilt pressing down on her chest. She knows that the explosion was not just an act of violence. It was an act of profound betrayal. Humanity's fear has poisoned the fragile trust that was beginning to form. And yet, even in the wake of destruction, she senses that the heptapods are not done. Abbott's sacrifice was not meaningless. Something important remains to be understood. From the explosion, Louise isolates herself, diving deeper into the logograms that the heptapods left behind. She discovers patterns hidden within patterns, layers of meaning that transcend human comprehension. Her visions intensify. She sees herself years into the future, standing at a diplomatic gala, conversing fluently in Mandarin with General Shang, the Chinese military leader currently spearheading calls for war. In this vision, Shang whispers to her a private message, words that carry deep personal meaning. But the paradox is staggering. How can she remember something that has not yet happened? The heptapod's gift is not merely linguistic, it is cognitive. Rewiring her brain to perceive time as they do, she begins to live in two realities. Simultaneously, one in which she is a grieving mother who lost her daughter, and another where that daughter has not yet been born. The knowledge is bittersweet. She understands that accepting the heptapod, language means embracing a future where she will experience unbearable loss, yet also unimaginable love. To learn their language is to surrender the illusion of free will. Every choice is already written, every outcome predetermined, and yet she does not recoil from this truth. Instead, she begins to see the beauty in it, the way joy and sorrow intertwine, the way beginnings and endings are inseparable. Meanwhile, political tensions reach a breaking point. The Chinese fleet prepares to strike the alien ship near their borders. Panic spreads in Montana, soldiers packing up, readying for evacuation. But Louise knows she cannot leave. The key to averting disaster lies not in weapons or strategies, but in fully embracing the gift the heptapods have. Running out, Louise takes one final desperate step. She returns to the Montana ship, slipping past military restrictions to re-establish contact. Inside, she finds herself face-to-face with the surviving heptapod, Costello. The creature communicates urgently, releasing a cascade of logograms that envelop the chamber in inky symbols. Louise struggles to comprehend, but then, as though a switch is flipped in her mind, the symbols coalesce into understanding. The weapon is not destruction, it is their language itself. By learning it, humanity gains the ability to perceive time as the heptapods do. This perception is the ultimate tool, the ultimate bridge across civilizations. Louise asks about Abbott, and Costello responds with a logogram meaning death process, a phrase filled with sorrow yet acceptance. Abbott's sacrifice was part of the larger plan. Costello then reveals the ultimate truth. In 3,000 years, the heptapods will require humanity's help, just as humanity now requires theirs. This exchange is not about dominance. It is about interdependence. Louise realizes the weight of this revelation. Humanity's survival depends not on force, but on unity. The aliens are offering not answers, but the capacity to ask better questions, to transcend their limitations. As she steps out of the ship, the world outside teeters on the edge of war. But Louise carries within her something greater than hope. She carries the future itself, encoded in a language that rewrites death's edges closer to destruction. News reports broadcast images of global unrest, riots in major cities, stock markets collapsing, borders closing. The alien ships, silent and immovable, are treated not as visitors, but as catalysts of chaos. In China, General Shang announces that his forces are on high alert, ready to strike the alien vessel near their territory. Russia follows suit, preparing its military for coordinated action. Meanwhile, in Montana, the U.S. military camp transforms into a hive of tension. Colonel Weber struggles to maintain control as intelligence leaks spread, feeding paranoia among soldiers and scientists alike. Louise watches the unfolding crisis with quiet despair. She understands now more than ever that the heptapod's arrival is not an invasion, but a test of humanity's ability to overcome fear and embrace a higher form of understanding. Yet the very gift meant to save humanity threatens to destroy it. The paradox gnaws at her. The heptapods have offered their language as a tool, but human beings, chained by suspicion and aggression, interpret it as a threat. Ian tries to comfort her, reminding her that progress always comes with resistance. But even he cannot ignore the escalating danger. As night falls over the camp, Louise closes her eyes and finds herself slipping once again into visions of the future. She sees herself with a young girl, her daughter, teaching her about science, about wonder, about love. She also sees arguments, sickness, and ultimately loss. The images flood her mind, but instead of overwhelming her, they grant her clarity. To understand the heptapod's gift is to accept both joy and tragedy, for they are inseparable. And with that acceptance comes resolve. She knows what must be done. She must use her new perception to bridge the gap not just with the aliens, but with her own stakes with urgency. Intelligence confirms that China has issued an ultimatum to the heptapods: leave immediately or face annihilation. Other nations quietly prepare to follow suit, aligning with the Chinese stance. The U.S. military, fearing being left behind, prepares contingency plans of its own. Louise feels suffocated by the panic around her. She pleads with Colonel Weber to give her more time, insisting that the aliens' message has been misunderstood. But Weber, pressured by political superiors, is unyielding. To him, national security outweighs philosophical speculation. Ian stands with Louise, backing her arguments with scientific logic. But their voices are drowned by the roar of military machinery, mobilizing for conflict. That afternoon, as the camp prepares for possible evacuation, Louise is struck by another vision. She sees herself years ahead, standing in a grand hall at a diplomatic gathering. She holds a book, her book, on the alien language, a work that will revolutionize humanity's understanding of communication. By her side is Ian, not just as a colleague, but as a partner, father to the child she has seen so many times in her visions. The paradox is dizzying. She is glimpsing moments that have not yet happened, yet already feel inevitable. From this vision, a single thread of hope emerges. She recalls the figure of General Shang at the gala, recalls the intimate moment when he whispers something into her ear, words that only she and he would ever know. And in that instant, she realizes the truth. The heptapods have given her not just knowledge, but the ability to act with foresight, to use future events to reshape the present. The weapon is not destruction, it is time itself. World poised on the edge of catastrophe, Louise makes a daring choice. Disobeying orders, she slips away from the camp and seizes a secure satellite phone. Guided not by logic alone, but by visions of the future, she dials a number she should not know, the private line of General Shang. Military officers scramble to stop her, alarms blaring as her unauthorized transmission is detected. But Louise remains calm, her voice steady as she speaks. She recalls the gala vision, the moment years into the future when Shang whispered his wife's dying words into her ear. Words meant only for him. She repeats them now across time and space, using knowledge she could not possibly have in the present. Shang is stunned into silence. In that moment, he realizes the truth. Louise is not lying. The alien's gift is real. The future is not hidden. It is accessible if one learns to see as they do. His resolve shifts. Where once he stood as a hawk demanding war, he now becomes the linchpin of peace. He orders his forces to stand down, to open communication with the heptapods rather than attack. His decision ripples across the globe, halting strikes from Russia and other nations as well. Humanity teeters, then steps back from the brink. Louise, her heart pounding, knows that this moment will never be credited to her. Official records will bury her actions under layers of classified secrecy. But it does not matter. She has done what was needed, not for glory but for survival. The immediate threat of global war averted, a cautious calm descends. Leaders begin to reopen channels of communication. Scientists resume their exchanges, and the alien ships, still hovering silently, remain steadfast. Louise and Ian return to the heptapod. Vessel, for what they know, may be their final encounter. Costello, the surviving alien, appears before them, immense and enigmatic as ever. Louise, now fully immersed in the alien language, perceives not just words but intentions, emotions, a tapestry of meaning beyond linear thought. Costello releases one final message, an intricate logogram that expands across the barrier like a living constellation. Its meaning blossoms within Louise's mind. The gift is given. Time is shared. We will meet again. She understands now that the heptapod's purpose was never conquest or dominance. It was interdependence. By giving humanity their language, they have ensured that when their own time of need arrives in millennia, humanity will be ready. Louise bows her head in gratitude, not as a gesture of submission, but of acknowledgement. Ian, too, is awed, though he admits he cannot fully grasp what Louise experiences. Their paths are converging, yet already diverging, shaped by choices they cannot escape. As they exit the ship, the ramp retracts, and the alien craft begins to ascend, vanishing silently into the sky. Around the world, the other 11 ships do the same, disappearing into the clouds. Humanity is left changed, confused, shaken, but gifted with something that will echo through generations. The world slowly begins to heal. Scientists across nations work together to decode the alien language, guided by Louise's breakthroughs. Her book, The Universal Language of Time, becomes the cornerstone of a new era in communication and philosophy. Yet for Louise, the journey is deeply personal. She knows now that the visions she experienced are not fragments of memory, but glimpses of her own life's path. She will fall in love with Ian. They will marry, have a daughter, and experience years of joy. But she will also face heartbreak. She knows her daughter will die young from a rare illness. She knows her marriage with Ian will falter under the weight of choices she made, of truths he cannot accept. The knowledge is both a burden and a gift. She stands at the precipice of choice, knowing full well that free will is an illusion, that her future is already written, and yet she chooses to embrace it anyway. For to know the future is not to escape it. It is to live it with open eyes. In the film's haunting final moments, Louise whispers the truth to Ian. If you could see your whole life laid out in front of you, would you change things? It is not a question of avoidance, but of acceptance. The circle of time closes, only to begin again. Humanity has been given a second chance, a chance to transcend fear, to embrace connection, to see beyond the limits of the present. And for Louise, the greatest lesson of all is that every moment, whether joy or sorrow, is part of a greater whole. Beautiful because it cannot be changed. Departure of the Heptapods, Louise finds herself reflecting deeply on the concept of time. Unlike her colleagues who view the alien language as a puzzle to be solved, she understands that it is not merely a system of symbols, but a doorway into a different way of being. For the Heptapods, time is not a linear progression, but a simultaneous existence. Past, present, and future coexist, forming a complete circle. This realization unsettles those around her. But for Louise, it becomes a source of peace. She begins to apply this perception in her daily life, noticing subtle shifts in how she thinks, acts, and feels. A conversation is no longer a sequence of sentences, but a tapestry of meaning. A memory is not something behind her, but beside her. The future is not unknown, but already unfolding. Yet this expanded awareness comes with weight. She sees her daughter's future illness, Ian's eventual departure, the sorrow etched into her own future face. Still, she chooses to embrace it all. For Louise, knowledge of the future does not diminish the value of the present. It amplifies it. Every laugh, every touch, every fleeting moment becomes infinitely precious because it is unchangeable. In a sense, she realizes that this is the Heptapod's true gift. Not control over destiny, but acceptance of it. Humanity, however, struggles with this concept. Politicians and generals hunger for power, imagining ways to weaponize the language, to gain an advantage over rivals. Scientists debate whether free will exists at all if the future is already written. Philosophers argue endlessly about determinism. But Louise carries the truth quietly within her heart. The power of the Heptapods. Language lies not in altering the future, but in embraced past. Louise and Ian grow closer. Their shared experiences with the Heptapods have forged a bond unlike any other. Together, they lecture at universities, collaborate on research papers, and serve as advisors to global leaders seeking to understand the alien gift. Eventually, their professional partnership evolves into something deeper, a romance born not of sudden passion, but of profound respect and shared wonder. Louise sees in Ian not just the man he is, but the man he will become, a father, a husband, a companion who will walk beside her through years of joy and pain. And yet she also sees the fracture that will come. She knows that one day Ian will learn the truth about their daughter's future illness, and he will resent her for bringing a child into the world despite knowing the inevitable. This knowledge casts a shadow over their happiness. For Louise, however, love is not diminished by its ending. She embraces Ian fully, cherishing the sweetness of their present. moments even as she carries the burden of their future. Ian, unaware of the full extent of her foresight, lives joyfully making plans, dreaming of the life ahead. His optimism is untainted by knowledge of the inevitable. Louise envies and admires him for this. Their love story becomes a mirror of the larger lesson humanity faces. Whether to live in fear of what is to come, or to live fully in the present, even knowing it will one day end. Louise and Ian welcome a daughter into the world. They name her Hannah, a palindrome, a word that reads the same forward and backward, symbolizing the circular nature of time itself. From the moment of her birth, Louise feels both overwhelming joy and profound sorrow. She has already seen the contours of Hannah's life, her first steps, her love of drawing, her curiosity about the stars, her laughter that fills rooms with light. She has also seen the tragedy that awaits, the rare, unstoppable illness that will claim her life in adolescence. Yet Louise chooses not to resist this knowledge. Instead, she treasures every moment, living fully within the paradox of joy and grief. Ian is an adoring father, devoted and playful, building a world of love around his daughter. For years, their family life is filled with warmth. Birthdays, bedtime stories, vacations, and quiet moments of connection. But the shadow of Hannah's fate looms. Louise carries it silently, never speaking of what she knows. To her, the value of their time together lies not in its length, but in its richness. She recalls the Heptapods message, "Time is shared." She understands that Hannah's life, though brief, is complete whole within the circle of time. Her daughter is not defined by her death, but by every moment of life that leads to it. For Louise, this realization becomes a mantra. Life's meaning is not diminished by its finitude. It is made beautiful because it grows older. Louise's silence begins to weigh heavily on her relationship with Ian. He notices the moments of quiet sorrow in her eyes, the way she sometimes looks at their daughter, as though holding both joy and grief at once. Eventually, Louise reveals the truth, that she has known all along what will happen, that Hannah's illness and death are already written in the future. Ian is devastated. To him, this knowledge feels like betrayal. He cannot reconcile the idea that Louise chose to bring a child into the world, knowing the pain that awaited them. He feels robbed of choice, stripped of the illusion of free will that gave his life meaning. Their love, once strong, begins to crumble under the weight of this revelation. Arguments grow more frequent, silence more suffocating. Ian, unable to bear the inevitability of loss, distances himself. Louise watches this unfold with sorrow, but not with surprise. She has seen this before, lived it in visions, and now it is simply unfolding as it must. She understands Ian's pain, his anger, his sense of betrayal. She does not blame him. Instead, she accepts it as part of the circle, part of the tapestry of their lives. For Louise, love and loss are inseparable. For Ian, the burden of foresight is too heavy to bear. In the end, he leaves, unable to continue the life they built together. Louise remains with Hannah, carrying both love and grief within her. Years of Hannah's life are a blend of joy and sorrow, laughter and pain. She grows into a brilliant, creative young girl, filled with questions about the universe, much like her parents. She asks Louise about stars, about time, about love. Louise answers as best she can, always with honesty, always with gentleness. But when the illness comes slow and relentless, Louise knows that the end is near. She watches helplessly as her daughter weakens, as doctors offer no hope, as time slips away. Yet she does not despair. She holds Hannah close, treasuring every remaining moment, every whispered word, every tear and smile. In these moments, Louise fully understands the Heptapod's gift. To know the future is not to change it, but to embrace it, to live each moment fully, even knowing it will end. She recalls her first encounter with the aliens, the way they revealed the circle of time, and she realizes that her daughter's life, though brief, is not incomplete. It is whole, perfect in its own way, filled with meaning. On the day Hannah dies, Louise is overcome with grief, yet she feels no regret. She has lived this circle before and will live it again. Time to her is not a line, but an endless loop, where every joy and every sorrow is eternal. In the quiet after Hannah's passing, Louise closes her eyes and whispers the truth she has carried all along, that love, even when bound by loss, is the greatest gift. As passing, Louise's world becomes quiet, almost unbearably so. The house that once rang with laughter and music now feels like an empty shell. Ian's absence deepens the silence, leaving Louise to navigate grief alone. And yet she does not drown in despair. The Heptapods' language has reshaped her mind, teaching her to see not only loss, but the wholeness of life's circle. For Louise, Hannah is not gone. She exists in every moment they shared and in every moment that is yet to come. Time does not erase. It preserves. On nights when sorrow threatens to overwhelm her, Louise closes her eyes and drifts into visions. Hannah, as a child drawing pictures on the floor. Hannah as a teenager laughing with friends. Hannah as an infant held against her chest. These moments come not as memories, but as living realities, always accessible, always present. In these visions, Louise finds solace. She begins to write, pouring her experiences into a book about the heptapod language. Not as an academic manual, but as a philosophy of life. Her words speak of acceptance, of love, of the beauty of fleeting moments. She hopes that one day, humanity will understand the gift not as a tool for power, but as a lesson in humility. Meanwhile, the world outside continues its frantic pace, nations jockeying for influence, scientists racing to master the alien language. Louise, however, remains still, her grief and her wisdom intertwining. She knows that the heptapods have left, but their presence lingers, not in the sky, but in the way she now perceives every second of her existence. And the ripple effects of the heptapods' visit reshape human civilization. The 12 nations that once teetered on the brink of war now collaborate more than ever before, bound by the shared mystery of the alien gift. Scientific revolutions unfold, new breakthroughs in physics, medicine, and communication emerge as humanity gradually adopts the non-linear principles of the heptapod language. For some, the gift becomes a means of control, with governments attempting to restrict access, fearing the implications of ordinary citizens glimpsing their futures. For others, it is a spiritual awakening, a way to transcend fear of death and embrace life with clarity. Universities create entire departments devoted to studying the heptapod script. Philosophers debate whether free will is dead or simply transformed. Politicians invoke the aliens as justification for unity or division, depending on their agendas. Through it all, Louise remains a quiet figure at the center. Her book revered as the foundational text of a new era. She is invited to speak at conferences, to advise leaders, to shape policy, but she always returns to the core truth. The language is not about power, it is about perspective. She tells audiences that the heptapods' greatest lesson is that time is not to be conquered, but embraced. That humanity must learn to live not in fear of endings, but in gratitude for beginnings. Though not everyone understands, her words plant seeds that will grow long after she is gone. Louise dreams, not of her daughter, not of Ian, but of the heptapods. In her vision, she is back inside the mist-filled chamber, the pale light illuminating their towering forms. Costello and Abbott stand before her, whole and uninjured, their limbs moving with grace. They release logograms into the air, symbols vast and infinite, expanding like galaxies across the space between them. Louise understands instinctively that this is not a memory but a continuation, a reminder that their connection transcends time and space. The logograms speak of cycles, of civilizations rising and falling, of species meeting and parting, of time as an endless ocean where every drop is eternal. She realizes that the heptapods' gift was never just for humanity's survival but for its transformation. They offered a way to see beyond fear, to understand that existence itself is the gift. When she awakens, tears wet her face, but her heart is light. She feels less alone, as though the heptapods still watch, still guide, still share their wisdom from afar. She begins to believe that, just as they promised, humanity will one day return the gift, that in 3,000 years, when the heptapods need help, humanity will stand ready, not as conquerors, but as partners in the circle of time. As she grows older, she reflects often on the paradox of choice. Did she ever truly decide to love Ian? To bring Hannah into the world? To accept the heptapod's gift? Or were these choices already written, inevitable as the rising of the sun? At first, she feared that knowledge of the future meant the death of freedom. But over time, she comes to see it differently. Choice, she realizes, is not about altering the future, but about embracing it with courage. Knowing what lies ahead does not diminish the value of living. It enhances it. To choose to love, even knowing it will end in loss, is an act of defiance against despair. To choose joy in the face of inevitable sorrow is the truest form of freedom. She remembers the moment she first asked Ian, "If you could see your whole life laid out in front of you, would you change things?" At the time, it was a question. Now it is her answer. She would not change a thing. Every moment of joy, every shard of grief, every circle of time is part of the same whole. And in that acceptance lies peace. Twilight of her life, Louise stands once more before the horizon, watching the sun dip below the mountains. The world has changed, and yet it has not. Humanity continues to struggle, to fight, to hope, to dream. But beneath it all lies the quiet hum of the Heptapods' gift, shaping minds, reshaping futures. Louise feels Hannah's presence beside her, not as memory but as reality, as eternal as the sunset. She knows that time is not a line leading to death but a circle, eternal and unbroken. Her life, with all its joys and sorrows, is complete, and she embraces it without regret. In her final moments, she whispers words of gratitude, not just to her daughter and to Ian, but to the Heptapods, whose gift revealed the truth of existence. The camera of life pulls back, and the circle closes, only to open again. For time is not ending. It is always beginning. Humanity's story, Louise's story, Hannah's story, all are threads in the same tapestry, infinite and beautiful. And in the silence of the cosmos, the Heptapods wait, knowing that when the circle turns again, humanity will be ready.